guess what? The foundation of your new life is being built as we speak. Today I want to talk about a really dreary subject. Dreary but rewarding, dreary but fulfilling. And this is why I'm wearing red today, because I want to talk about the dark night of the soul. Listen, if only it lasted just one night. I think it should be called Dark Decade of the Soul, or at the very best, Dark Months of the Soul. You see, but however long it takes, really depends entirely on how resistant we are to this dark night of the soul, which is actually a gift, believe it or not. And it's often triggered by past traumas, by events of the past that were just too painful for us, and they remained buried. And we keep ignoring them until it just bubbles up and explodes, you know. Many terrible things could have happened to us in the past, and whether we like it or not, they've become a part of us. So instead of ignoring those parts, we can confront them, we can feel them, and become better people because of them. This is integration. This is self-knowledge. It is self-awareness. And finally, it leads to self-love. So one could say that the more cruelty that you endured, the more opportunities there is for self-realization and self-love. So I'm doing this video. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, and these are just my personal experiences. And I'm doing this because if you're going through the dark night of the soul, it can be really awful and terrifying. And I just want you to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. This is, you know, it does lead to a lot of fulfillment if we don't resist it. So I just hope that this gives you some support, validates you, and makes you feel less alone, so that, you know, when we're on this journey, every little bit of help, every little bit of support counts to take you from one day to the next. So if you're going through this terrifying time, I just hope that you find comfort in my channel. The dark night of the soul happens for us, not to us. You know, when it happens, it feels like a punishment, but it's actually a beautiful gift because it's a time for purification and renewal. And I think for most people, it's brought about by some kind of tragedy or disaster that just crashed your whole life, like your entire life, your career, your relationships, your family, your circle of friends. It's like everything was just destroyed, or everything, you know, comes crashing down. You might lose your job, you might lose your friends, your family, and this often leads to a period of isolation. Now, the period of isolation is very, very important, and it's very necessary, because that's when you truly know who you are. You know, when you're with people, your aura, your energy is blending with everyone else's, and you don't really know where your energy ends and someone else's begins. You know, there's a lot of enmeshment when we're with a lot of people. But when we're isolated, whether mentally or physically, of course, physical isolation is the best for this, because then you've cut off everyone, you've cut off your old life, and you are beginning to know yourself, because there is no enmeshment, there is no diluting of your own energy. And it can be very painful, because then we're forced to look into all the dark areas. We're forced to look into so many areas in the past that we have buried, that we have ignored. And the dark night of the soul forces us to look into the demons. But we're also stripped of everything that is unimportant. We're stripped of our fake identities, outdated beliefs. And this is why sometimes the dark night of the soul is called an ego death. If you don't know that this is what you're going through, then it can be very terrifying. So I just want to help you understand what it's all about and what happens during the dark night of the soul. And, I find that this phrase by Eckhart Tolle is the best line to describe the dark night of the soul. When the ego weeps for what it has lost, the soul rejoices for what it has gained. I think that describes it so perfectly, because that's how it feels. You feel that everything has been taken away from you, everything has crashed, and everything that you knew, everything that you had worked for, just comes tumbling down. That is when your ego is weeping for what it's lost. And soon you will find that what the ego has lost, the spirit gains. I find that perfectly describes the dark night of the soul, because everything that you had worked for, everything you believed, whether it's your identity, whether it's your belief system, your values, they all come crashing down. And what you knew is no longer satisfying, is no longer appropriate, no longer makes you happy, no longer gives you peace. So the dark night of the soul actually comes to those who have at least this much self-awareness, and it comes to those who are ready, okay? Do you really think, the universe and the angels, they have so much work to do. Do you really think that they would go to someone who's not ready? Someone who is resistant to it, and someone who doesn't want to change their life? Or someone who's perfectly happy being asleep, even though deep down they know that there's something not quite right with their life. But they choose to sleep through it, but not you. And this is why the dark night of the soul comes to you. It's a privilege. When it happens, you're not going to feel like it's a privilege. I know, I understand. It feels so desperately hopeless that it would never end. And this is where, you just try not to resist it. Try to let it happen, feel it, let it be. Just go through the pain, and it's actually less painful when you go through it. It's less painful than resisting it. I mean, I'm one to talk because I've been resisting it for a very, very long time. I had the dark night of the soul knocking on my door many times over many years. But I kept resisting it, and the pain got worse and worse and worse until one day there was no choice anymore. My life came crashing down. There was nothing that I could salvage except for basic things like my health and some basic things that I owned. And good thing I had enough intuition to have bought a piece of land out in the wilderness. And that helped me that helped me isolate myself even further. I remember thinking, God, this is such bad timing. I just bought this land and there's no one around. There's no one to support me. And this happens to me. Gee, thanks, Thanks a lot for hitting me at this time. But it turned out to be the perfect time. It was the perfect time because the universe further isolated me. And this isolation helped me really get to know myself, my values, what I really believe in, and who I was at the core. Recently I met up with a friend whom I hadn't seen for decades, I think close to 30 years or something like that. And obviously our friendship is very different from the past, because I am such a different person. But when we got talking, she said, you know what? You haven't changed one bit. And I said, what do you mean? I've changed so much. I'm a completely different person now. And she said, yes, but the core of a person never changes. And I said to her, oh, okay. Well, that means I was always a decent person then. And she said, yes, of course. And you see, I made this huge 360-degree turn where I come back to the same person that I was before. Except the difference was I was in the wrong environment. I was with the wrong people who kept telling me that I was wrong. Everything I did was wrong. And I had to go through this huge, big-ass circle to come back to who I always was. And this friend who told me that I hadn't changed one bit probably saw, the essence of me rather than my external behaviors. But then again, my external behaviors have improved a lot because I was a nasty person for the longest time. When I was going through all this and not knowing the issues, the underlying issues that I had been ignoring, and I took it out on everyone else. I was really nasty for a long time until, I went through the dark night of the soul, and that's when everything came to me, and I did so much self-reflection. Being in isolation is very much like a caterpillar in a cocoon, stuck in a cocoon and struggling to get out as a butterfly. Most people don't want to get out of that cocoon because, restrictive as it is, it's comfortable. To turn into a butterfly is what you're supposed to do when you're in this dark night of the soul journey. At times it feels like you're being punished for awakening. I have regretted many times, like, why didn't I just remain asleep? This is so hard. Why didn't I just did what everyone else does, like in the comfort zone of being in a factory production line where you're producing sausage link after sausage link day in, day out. And you have the company of people who also are in this comfort zone of denying themselves the journey of a lifetime, which is self-knowledge, which is breaking free from society's cage. But this form of comfort doesn't lead to any rewards. It doesn't lead to fulfillment. Fulfillment is the ultimate form of comfort. It's long-lasting comfort. It's sustainable comfort. So if you want sustainable, real comfort, then you got to get out of your comfort zone. The dark night of the soul is really the most painful internal journey that you can go through. It's more than just a few mishaps. It's excruciatingly painful. But don't worry, okay? Do not worry, because there is an end to it. There is light at the end of the tunnel. If you don't resist it, then it'll happen faster. You'll get there faster. Because you know what? Because the dark night of the soul is really a period of rebirth, of renewal. This is where all the fake identities, all the fake stuff is discarded. And you feel lost because that was all you knew. This is a detox period where everything has to be emptied out. And once you know who you are, and you will know exactly who you are, what your values are. And once you know that, everything, every external circumstance will align to you, to your values. And, after all this freaking hard work, after all this pain that you've gone through, when you finally know exactly who you are, exactly what you want, that's when people come and say, oh, you're so lucky. It's not luck. What people call luck that you work so damn hard for is actually alignment. It's not luck, it's alignment. People manifest all the time. We're manifesting every single second of the day. But it's only when you know exactly who you are, what your values are, that you manifest what you want, what your soul truly desires. You manifest what aligns with your values. And you'll be happy with what you manifest. Because look, if you don't know who you are and you're still manifesting, and this is why people say, why do these things happen to me? This is not what I want. People think that they know what they want, but actually, most people don't know what they want. They think they know what they want because that's what society wants. That's what society has conditioned us to want. You know, the sausage link factory production line. When you manifest what your heart truly desires, there's nothing but to be happy, you know, because that's what your heart wants. That's what your soul wants. If you don't know what your heart wants, you're going to manifest all sorts of things you don't want that lead to all sorts of situations that you don't want. Just cut the crap and find out really who you are. And isolation is the best thing to do that. And don't worry that you're going to turn into a hairy hermit, you know, with long nails and greasy hair. It's not going to be for long. This isolation is just temporary. I mean, I've been in isolation for almost 8 years, and I feel that I am ready to come out of the woodwork, shave my beard off, you know, shower, and see people. And of late, I have had friends from a long time ago text me and say, hey, how are you? Why don't we meet up? And I have been meeting up with quite a number of friends, but they're not the old circle of friends. You know, these are old new friends or new friends. And it's been so very lovely to be with people who are on the same path. Well, not necessarily on the same spiritual path, but they're on the same page as me, you know. They have probably done all the shit crap work, and they're at this point in their life that matches with mine. I now have to have a Google Calendar. I haven't needed a calendar for 8 years because nothing happened. But I haven't lost the ability to socialize. I still have my social etiquette intact, so you don't have to worry about turning into a hermit for life unless you want to. Yeah, you don't have to worry about that. For now, depending on what stage you're at in this dark night of the soul, for now, just focus on the moment. Try not to think about the past or the future. You know, as I say, it depends on what stage you're at. If you're at the beginning stage, then yeah, you have to look into the past and make sure no stone is left unturned, and look into all the demons, into everything. Feel sorry for yourself for a certain period of time, and then when you're ready, just focus on the present moment, not the past, not the future. Because when you're in the present moment, guess what? The foundation of your new life is being built as we speak.